Hello, I'm Jackie Leonard and you're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. And we begin in the United States with the increasingly bitter war of words between President Trump and the man who wants to replace him, his Democratic challenger Joe Biden. The current bone of contention, law and order, and more specifically the violence at street protests in a number of US cities, including Portland, Oregon. The president at a news conference accused Mr. Biden of being weak.
We're trying to help cities. They are, in all cases, Democrat-run, but we're doing the best we can to help them without really much of a consent. We'd like to have the consent. As an example, in Portland, we could solve that problem in approximately 1 hour, but the mayor refuses, perhaps for political reasons. I don't know why it's good for him to have a city that's falling apart.
Earlier, Mr. Biden had accused President Trump of stoking politically explosive violence and seeking to instill fear in America, and of being unable to control supporters, acting like an armed militia.
This president long ago forfeited any moral leadership in this country. He can't stop the violence because for years he's fomented it. You know, he may believe mouthing the words law and order makes him strong. But his failure to call on his own supporters to stop acting as an armed militia in this country shows how weak he is.
Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes says law and order will be key in November's presidential election.
Yes, the battle lines have been very clearly drawn, and we have two very different views on why these violent protests are continuing on the streets of some American cities. Essentially a blame game, with Mr. Biden saying that Donald Trump is fanning the flames for political advantage, Mr. Trump blaming left-wing Democrats, or as he framed it at the news conference at the White House, the party of Joe Biden, for not coming down hard on the rioters and in some cities sending them to jail. So it's a now familiar theme from the president, and it has to be said that based on some of the recent opinion polls, some Americans may be being persuaded that Mr. Trump's vision of a country under President Biden would be, to put it mildly, less safe. This rioting could continue. That message seems to be getting through to some people.
And President Trump is planning to visit Kenosha on Tuesday, isn't he? And that, of course, has been gripped by unrest after the police shooting of Jacob Blake, even though the governor of Wisconsin has asked him not to go.
Yes, he says he wants to go to meet law enforcement officers to survey some of the damage done during the disturbances of last week. He'll be taken to see some damaged shop fronts. He will speak to police officers. This is the place that the National Guard were eventually deployed at the request of the governor. And President Trump has made it clear that he believes that this show of force has helped to quell, to quieten down the situation. And you can't see this visit outside of the prism of politics. Mr. Trump clearly believes that it will be to his advantage.
And he was also asked today, wasn't he, about Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yes, this was the 17-year-old who has been charged with killing two people during the protests in Kenosha last week, on the third night of the protests. And President Trump was asked about him, and he said that he believes that Kyle Rittenhouse was trying to get away from others involved in this disturbance. He says he fell, and then the president says, violently attacked him. He says, I guess he was in very big trouble. He probably would have been killed. So seemingly coming down in support of Kyle Rittenhouse.
That was Peter Bowes in Los Angeles.